Welcome to the Ignite You podcast.
Where two bros journey into all things spirituality and human transformation.
Let's get it. Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome, crew, to Ignite You. This is Ryan Miller.
And Cam McDougall.
And today we're talking about all things plant medicine, healing, talking about integration, and talking about what serves us most in these arenas.
We thought this would be a really good podcast to talk about because of the prevalence of plant medicine around us, particularly in Nosara, where we live in Costa Rica. There's a lot of plant medicine. I also just embarked on a very deep journey into the Amazon in February. So it's been some time now. Still very relevant, and we'll get into why in this podcast. And we thought it was a really good topic to bring up because these medicines, these tools found in the jungle, found in plants, and frogs will classify them as plants for this. I don't know why.
Why is frog a plant? But it is right now.
It lives on a plant, so association. I don't know why. Right. Anyways. Can be very powerful tools to ignite the human soul and help us move through challenges in this lifetime, past lifetimes, all the good stuff on multi-dimensional planes.
Yes. There are many ways which these plants, and as we're adding in frogs, do serve us on the journey, these different medicines. And we're going to talk about different ways that we feel it can be overused and or abused to use these plants, these medicines, to an extent where we personally feel that it doesn't serve us anymore. The way that we see some people in this space and how we've potentially navigated in this space in the past as well, which we'll talk about using these plants.
And when we started talking about this episode, we kind of had a bit of a, I wouldn't say a debate, but an unpacking on this topic because it's very controversial, and we were able to really start to question a lot of the things that we were saying and saying, well, is that true? Is there a right way? And it was really interesting because we looked at each other and we said, let's stop talking about this now because this should be a part of the episode. And so I think the most important thing to start with here is that we don't actually know everything about this topic. We don't know what or even if there's a right or wrong way to approach this. At the same time, we both feel relatively educated and are willing to open up to our experiences because we feel that we have learned a substantial amount over the course of our journeys.
Yes.
And plant medicine's like popping off. It's like it's like Hansel right now. It's so hot right now.
Hansel.
You know?
Notice the key word there, feel. The experience that we're talking about is not that we know. It's not that even that we think, but this is just us tuning into our experience being in these communities like Cam's talking about, being here in Costa Rica, where people will come to places like Nosara, come here, do plant medicine, leave. It's a hot spot for this work and for these medicines. And Cam and I lived in Bali at the same time. So we're very familiar with different cultures and communities around the world, some of the greatest hot spots for people to travel to, do medicine, find themselves through these medicines or whatever they're there for to heal, and then leave from that environment. But we've lived in these places for long term. So we've been in these containers and still we don't know that there's a right way or wrong way of doing this. But as Cam was talking about, we were navigating and talking about how there are these different sides and how there are these kind of extremes to going about plant medicine. Right?
Massive amounts of polarity.
Yeah.
Massive amounts of polarity. So it's been interesting to even observe myself, and I had a really good discussion about this with a good friend of ours actually here in Nosara, where we talked about what the right amount of ayahuasca ceremonies was, or if there was one, and this concept of reverence. And she had done 40 ayahuasca ceremonies by the age of 40.
Okay.
And had told me that she was very grateful for the experience, but eventually the medicine was like, you've worked with me enough. Go integrate, go live. And this was a very interesting topic because she also challenged me because I started kind of talking shit about people that I had met that were like, I've done 150 ayahuasca ceremonies and how that had triggered me. And so we won't get into necessarily why that triggered me because I haven't really unpacked that yet. Yeah. But at the same time, it was something that I was kind of just like, oh, like I feel like people are overusing this medicine. They're not treating it with the right reverence. And I think for me, it comes up because I know ayahuasca is going extinct. I know from being in the Amazon jungle and sitting with these medicine men, I know how much it's being overused and how much people are just, in my opinion, not approaching it with the right reverence. So I think I have a bit of a protection to her because as you can see, like I have an ayahuasca Shipibo medicine blanket behind us. Ayahuasca has a very, very, very deep place in my heart. And so I think I get a little triggered by people abusing her in my perspective. But she really opened me up where she said, well, this medicine needs to be out there and it's out there for a reason. And who are we to say what the right amount of ceremonies is for somebody? And at the same time, it was kind of hard for me to digest that because I was very doubtful that people were using the amount of reverence I feel is right.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that was my perspective. And she challenged me and we had a great, beautiful discussion about it. But I think it's really important to highlight that ayahuasca is going extinct. And they tell us that in the jungle. And it's a very real thing. At the same time, maybe that's what's supposed to happen. So I don't know. It's up in the air. It's wild.
Yeah. You're talking about the side of extremism of reverence, which I see that you have, especially for the medicine of ayahuasca so deeply. I noticed that and I saw that before you went into the journey. What is it? Like you spent 2 months on a diet or what was the thing like leading up to it and then post journey? There was a lot of reverence you had, I know, because you took out salt, you took out sugar, I think. You had some things that you kind of extracted from your diet completely. You were in celibacy, and you were navigating these things to give complete reverence for, what was it, about a month altogether for that journey?
So it was a lot more intense than an ayahuasca ceremony because I was doing a dieta with Bobenzana.
Yes.
So a lot of people going into ayahuasca, they call the dieta the diet that you do leading up to it. And there's so many different opinions on what that looks like. For some people, you do a dieta leading up to your ceremony for 7 days. For me, it was a month minimum that my medicine man told me.
Yep.
And the reason being was because I was going into the Amazon by myself to sit with these guys to drink a plant called Bobenzana, which is the sirena medicine. It's like the mermaid medicine of the Amazon. And so I drank Bobenzana. It's a massive heart opener every day for 5 days. And on night 1, 3, 5, I drank ayahuasca, which helps you navigate it.
Yeah.
Because I was taking so much medicine and sitting in a true dieta, and a true dieta is you go to the jungle to diet a master plant, I had a massive, conventional dieta leading up to it. So they told me 30-day minimum. I did 2 months.
Yeah.
Because for me, I just like that challenge. So I cut out sugar, salt, pork, red meat, chili, alcohol, which wasn't really a problem for me, any drugs, supplements, sex, ejaculation, everything. I went completely off to just purify and cleanse my body so that during that week I could open up to the medicine doing its work. And after, my medicine man also told me to stay for another month on the dieta. So no sex, but it was a little light. He said you can introduce some salt back in, you can introduce a little bit of fruit, like a little bit more of the sweets. But what he told me is ayahuasca is a very jealous medicine. She likes to work in a pure container and will continue to work with you after your ceremony. So in its entirety, I did 2 months, it was 10 days in the jungle and then a month on the other side. So it was about almost 3.5 months of being on this because I was on a strict diet when I was there.
Yeah, that's a quarter of a year.
Yeah.
So you think about that, and the other side we're talking about here is getting addicted to healing. This is something we've mentioned before, but wanted to expand on here. And if you have, in this case, full reverence for a medicine, that we'll call this, I'll call this full reverence, that you really showed up for, you gave a lot of time, you allocated so much to it, and you wouldn't have done this back to back, I don't think. I don't think it would have made sense because it took a quarter of your year to do this. We know that there's many people, we know people personally that go kind of back to back on weekends for
week to week.
Yeah,
to
just
week
keep
to
going
week.
with different medicines, keep going constantly into that world, or just come and do a quick trip, go back to the States, come back to this, whatever it is. And again, not to say that there's wrong or right, but it's to notice when and if we're addicted to the healing. Mm-hmm. When and if are we giving space, as we talked about in the last episode, for a ritualistic process to what we're showing up for? Mm-hmm. Or are we just jumping off that cliff, as we talked about? Or are we just like, yep, go, hit the cliff, go. Or are we giving reverence? Are we tuning into that? Are we showing up for that? Are we giving space for that? Because it's less likely that we'll become addicted when we give proper space to really tune into that frequency. Mm-hmm. At least that's what I feel.
And I love that because the most challenging aspects of that journey came up after.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember.
And so, yes, when I was there, it was very tough. I was in a lucid dream state pretty much for, a week. I came out of the jungle feeling very excited to be back in civilization. Mm-hmm. And then the emotions started coming. Then the integration started coming. Then the deep work started in my invitation to integrate what I had learned into my life and to be shown all these areas that I was still neglecting in my life. Mm-hmm. Ayahuasca kept working with me. Still is working with me to this day from that dieta. So is Bolbenzana. Mm-hmm. I have to continuously integrate. And I think a lot of the challenges that come up around this are people dive into the work because they feel like the medicines are going to heal them. And they think that it's only in the ceremony or in the act or in the psychedelic experience that the healing takes place.
Yeah.
And so we get addicted to this ceremony. We get addicted to going into these realms, so much so that we almost ignore bringing them into our lives, bringing them into our muggleness, bringing them into the third dimension and actually changing based on these lessons. Because if you don't listen to her when you get out of ceremony, you're going to get slapped down over and over and over and over again until you figure it out.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly like the analogy you talk about so often is going to the jungle, coming back to the village, and giving both experiences reverence, showing up fully for both experiences. One is not greater than the other. You need both to integrate what was in the jungle to bring it back to the village.
And I think as humans, we are either going to learn this the hard way or we're going to start getting it because we get slapped down enough times in ceremony that she tells us to stop.
Yeah.
It will go extinct if we continue to go the way that we're going. Even where I was in the jungle, ayahuasca used to grow everywhere. Now it doesn't grow there. They have to bring it in from way deeper in the Amazon. It doesn't grow where I was anymore. That's in the last 5 years. So if we don't actually start paying attention to this stuff, it's just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the Amazon, and we'll eventually lose these tools or try to create synthetic versions of them, which, in my opinion, just isn't the same.
Yeah.
So I'm really kind of hoping that humans start to approach with more reverence. And I think reverence is different for each person in a sense, where you brought up a great point when we were talking about this, and that is understanding your why.
Yeah.
And really getting in tune with your why.
That's everything.
Totally. And if you're in tune with your why, then you can use that why to shit test yourself. So if you go and set an intention to unpack childhood trauma with ayahuasca, and you go in and maybe you don't get what you thought, and then you go in again and again, you keep coming back. Why am I trying to get rid of this? Why am I so diligent in pushing for this one intention and ignoring the rest? Because a lot of these things can be sneaky. They can be a lot more cryptic than we think. But if we're either just stuck on this why, or we don't have a clear enough why, I think we get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Why is that?
Why, oh why?
It is the most important piece that I feel when going into anything, right? Intentionality. It's just having intention going into a space. In that, in itself, is a form of reverence. That is, okay, I'm doing this for this. Even if your why is to, I want to expand my capacity to connect to the cosmos. Cool. If that's truly what you're there to do, check out, tune into that. The thing is the integration part that Cam's talking about after the fact. What did we get in that experience? Give it space. Because whether or not we have a why and we're like, all right, I have a why. Okay, awesome. That means I think I know why I'm here. I have an example and something that's bringing me to this space, a North Star of sorts that's drawing me in a direction. You may get there and get completely flipped because that why could have came from a place that didn't serve you. That why could have been, a surface level version of the deeper onion that was going on. That why could have not actually been what was that surface and for you to heal at that time. Could have been many different things. But giving space after is what you're talking about. And that's the piece that I feel is so valuable, because it's so often we'll go from something and then just go straight back in.
Yeah.
And I know I do this, and off the track of plant medicine, but in the same regard, is with breath work. I've done it in the past where I'll do a breath work journey, have some insight, I'll create an intention, but then right after just go and do some whatever.
Yeah.
Like something that doesn't give me space. I'll go have lunch with people. I'll do something that takes me out of my intentionality to tune in. And I notice the difference. It's the same thing about having the ritual, playing with the butt wand. It's the same thing. It is. Because it's giving space to see what comes up, see what unfolds. But it's so often that once we're out of that container, that 2-hour window for breath work, that 1-week journey of ayahuasca, whatever it is, once we're out, it's like, oh, we're free. Okay, go back to the regular thing. Go back to what you were doing before. Why are you doing that? Like, why am I doing that? Like, that's the system.
So do you think that there's a right number of healing modalities, or do you think there's like, what's too much, what's too little? How do you think we navigate that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I definitely feel keyword, I don't know, but I feel the answer, because I feel I know the answer for myself. For me, I haven't even used ayahuasca yet. It hasn't felt right. I've had many opportunities, dude. Yeah. Like, you've had many opportunities. Yeah. There's been so many times where I could have done it, but I'm just like, actually, it doesn't really feel like that's what I need right now, or that doesn't feel like what I am to lean into. And to tune into that and say, no, that's not it right now. I will when it feels good. Probably at the location you went to, because that feels the best, most aligned. But and this is something we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about, but you are your own healer. You have the codes. You already know, but it's just being real fucking honest with yourself. It's seeking that truth within yourself. Where is this decision coming from? Why am I going into these containers? Am I afraid to be alone with my thoughts and with these things, to journal alone? Or do I feel like I have to go into a container and make sure I'm with people and I can move the energy? I know for me, that's my tendency is to actually go with people, do things with people, and then do healing together because that feels good. But can I really come back to my home and just sit with myself, listen to my thoughts, journal? I've had to put so much extra effort into that because that doesn't come natural to me. Sometimes it's the flip for people. So it's not to say that there's a right amount for all humans, that's for sure. But I feel like you do know when you really tune in.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
I resonate with that a lot. I got invited to probably 20 ayahuasca ceremonies before I actually sat ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was having dreams of vines caressing and holding me.
Yeah.
So they were actually coming into my dreams, and it wasn't scary, but they were like snakes. And I was also having dreams of snakes. I had a dream when I was in Colorado of this massive snake coming down through the mountains. Big anaconda. And all of these dreams felt like she was talking to me. And so through these experiences, I felt into my heart, is grandmother calling me to work with her? And it was a full body yes. Never before had it ever been. To be honest, I was kind of afraid of her before, and I was just very averse because it didn't feel right. And she came into my dream space, and I know it was the spirit of ayahuasca. And so I signed up for a retreat, Brandon's Warrior Retreats, which I'll add a link to. It's beautiful, beautiful retreat. And I couldn't make it because of the restrictions in the US and Canada. They had changed at one point. And so I pulled out, and I could have gone, but I couldn't have gotten back into the US. So I played the comfort card and said, no, I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay in the US for a little while longer.
Which, to actually pause you there just quickly, because you could look at that and be like, oh, these are signs, I shouldn't go. So it's interesting. It's a touchy thing. You can be like, oh, it's showing me I shouldn't go.
But in my heart, when I canceled that flight, I knew I made a mistake.
That's the difference. Yeah.
And it was that comfort versus pleasure kind of comparison, because the next day I woke up and I said, I shouldn't have done that. I should go.
Well, and you got a bunch of signs.
Well, that happened after, right? And so this is what I was bringing this up about is afterwards, I went to Austin, wanted to move there, wanted to check things out, was feeling the vibe, and got there. Things were kind of flowing, but it felt a little off. Broke my tooth, shattered my tooth in half on a piece of bone in some game meat. Okay, cool, random, whatever.
Yep.
A week and a half later, get COVID. Almost feel like I'm gonna die after 12 days. Like intense. I spent I think $4,000 on IV drips. Like I was in it. So bad. After that, heal up. We head on a road trip. We're out. We're having a good time. Nothing happened. We were side by siding in Utah, which was great because that could have been really bad. We did some gnarly shit. Get to Colorado. We drive into what we call the hurricane fire.
Yeah. And this is to say, just context, Boulder was the next destination in mind.
That's right.
Like Austin was there. And then we were like, okay, let's check. Because it was either, these are the three kind of hubs. Austin, Texas, Boulder, Colorado, Costa Rica. Didn't have the location yet. But it was kind of these three hubs. We were like, oh, where are we going to go? And then now we're getting in.
And then we get into Colorado. Hurricane fire, 120 mile per hour winds, fire sweeping through. We drove into this town called Superior that was being evacuated. We probably should have known by all the cars going the other way.
Yeah, but we go into the storm, you know? We
don't shy away from challenges.
Yeah.
We should have shied away.
That's why this is called Ignite. We went into the
we
fire.
Almost literally
lit
burned.
it up.
And we could see, it was actually very scary. It was very scary.
It was intense.
And sure enough, we start trying to get to our Airbnb, and all these things just start going sideways. I fall off my skateboard. It just becomes this mess. And so all these things kept happening. I kept getting injured. I kept doing this and that. And finally I said, okay, I'm out. I got to go to the jungle. This is wrong.
Yeah.
I felt intuitively into me that I wasn't listening to the call.
Yes. And so we couldn't actually get into Boulder. Firestorm. Couldn't actually get there. So we went to Denver, the closest city. It's New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Also. At that New Year's Eve, we had a really beautiful container.
We did.
So also mentioning this point, like, yeah, there was a bunch of shit that was happening that was like, oh, it doesn't feel right. And we found a container that felt conducive to showing up for. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, in that container, you also gained clarity.
Yeah, for sure. Because there was a bunch of people talking about Costa Rica who were there.
Okay.
And
yeah.
So all these signs started popping up. And really, when I tuned into it, it was the jungle was calling me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so sure enough, I'm like, all right, I'm out. Book the flight, head down to the jungle. I'm like, Ryan, I'll let you know what Costa Rica's like. I'll find the spot. You come meet me. Get to Costa Rica. Go to Jaco. I start avoiding again. I get into the flow of Costa Rica. Get injured. I actually had a dream. I was in bed and I had a dream that a coral snake came into my bed. And this dream was so real, so real. I could not decipher between it not being real or not. And it crawled into my bed and I jump out of bed, freaking out, and I pull the whole left side of my body, like just wrench my hamstring, my low back. I fell on the ground. I was almost in tears. It hurt so bad. And at that moment, when I laid on the ground, I was like, okay. I grabbed my phone and I booked a flight to Peru.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm going and sitting with the medicine. And the reason I'm telling you this story is that these medicines call us. They speak to us. Just because your friend tells you they do an ayahuasca ceremony and it supported them, isn't it speaking to you?
Yes.
When we get sign after sign after sign after invite after invite after invite, these things speak to us. And I think that's really important to add to what Ryan just said about you knowing, because you will know. Yes. Because it will speak to you. It will call you and you will think about it or see it, and you'll feel this reverence, this pull, this tug.
Or you'll just get slapped and slapped and slapped. Like Cam did.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, I gotta fucking go.
Yeah.
This is a really cool topic because I like to talk about this, and we've spoken about this before as well, and that is one of intuition. Because it's such a thing. You'd be like, oh, is my intuition told me? But what you were saying from the beginning was that you felt, oh, I'm supposed to go to Peru. From there, you already had the code. You said, I'm supposed to go. Months go by. You get fucked by all these things. You had needed that to be like, dude, you're supposed to go. You're supposed to go. You're supposed to go. I am a firm believer that intuition at this day and age is trained. I don't know if you believe this too, but why
I'm interested to hear more.
I know. Because I'm a believer of this because I feel we've been trained out of our innate ability to tap into intuition. So I believe what we call intuition a lot of the times is a gut feeling. What is a gut feeling?
A program?
A program. A gut feeling is emotion we're holding on to. A gut feeling is fears that we have inside of us. And I feel that when we say, oh, it's just my intuition speaking, a lot of the times it can be that fear speaking. It can be that limiting belief. It can be that piece. So if you don't spend time actually training your intuition, training your ability to tune into that frequency, what you're calling your intuition may just be putting you back in the loop. So
that's juicy, man.
Yeah,
that's so controversial.
I know.
Too, and it's tough to dance.
It is,
and we could go down a huge rabbit hole with this. And I do want to do an episode on the power of programming in society. I think that is something that's going to happen soon. So we won't dive too deep into that, but that resonates deeply because I really feel like we are superheroes. Like we are superhuman. We are limitless potential. There is nothing that we cannot do. We are gods in the flesh. We are
Yes.
just these powerful, powerful beings that have been programmed to believe that we have limitation.
Exactly.
And because we are a species with dementia, meaning we don't remember life after life after life after life, we get trapped in this loop of constantly trying to remember this, and it doesn't build.
Yes.
So I believe that could very well be, whether it's the dark forces or not. I'm Batman. Or not, like, programming us to believe this.
Yes.
Or just the fact that that's just how, this system works, is a very important thing to bring in, because I do feel like a lot of people are shut off from their true intuition, and it's really hard to navigate what is a pattern, what is a limiting belief, what is a story that we ascribe to prevent us from something we're afraid of that we label as intuition. There's so many things along those lines. And I actually feel like this is a huge block to plant medicine, right?
Yes.
To being able to tap into plant medicine's ability to speak to us, because it is through intuition, it is through signs, it is through dreams. And if we don't have the ability to really hold that and decipher the code in it, it can get pretty messy.
Yeah, and when that doesn't feel logical, our intellectual mind cannot capture that and be like, oh, that's outside of me. Where did I hear that from? And we'll try to make sense of it, and then we'll dilute what that was. I know that's me for the longest time.
Yeah.
I did not believe in anything external, like coming into
Yeah.
my system, be like, oh, I must have just, that was a weird thought anyways, and then move on from it,
Totally.
especially in these breath works and different things. But that's why altered states are so valuable to me now. And that's why I work in this area of flow state and altered states, because that's where we let go of the belief of our identity and what holds us back in that realm, saying, I am this, so I cannot be that. But when we open that up, we're like,
And we connect with the divine, baby.
yeah, we get it in. Then we can start listening to things outside of us. Then we can start really hearing that we're connected to all of this, like the plant medicine, like these different pieces. We can really start tapping in and knowing and feeling what intuition is. That's really fucking cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And to add to this, so I feel like right now some people could be listening and say, okay, well, how the fuck am I supposed to use this in an applicable way, right? Because if, for me, I run into this a lot of the times, and it actually drives me kind of nuts, where I sit there and I'm like, is this intuition or is this a pattern? Is this intuition or is this a pattern? And it kind of drives me fucking crazy sometimes. So
we'll bounce these ideas
totally
off each other.
and we need to have people in our lives that can help us
challenge me,
go deeper.
check up for that.
Exactly. But when it comes to plant medicine, from an applicable standpoint, this is what I ascribe to.
Yes.
I ascribe to this concept of less is more. And the less we use these modalities and the more we integrate them, the more powerful they will be in our lives. That's what I ascribe to. For me, I would never do more than an ayahuasca ceremony a year. Never.
Yep.
Never. And if I do an ayahuasca ceremony in a year, I most likely will limit the amount of other healing modalities I'm doing as well.
Okay.
Yes, I do breath work. Yes, I meditate almost daily. I'm not doing breath work journeys daily, but some form of breathing, some form of embodied breath. But I will limit that. And even after Aya, I did not do a lot of practices.
So I'm curious about this. Why is that? Is it because we're talking about intuition versus limiting belief and these things? Is it because you've tuned in with that beforehand and decided, like, how did you tap in and decide that to be your truth and be like, yep, that's what it is. I know it. It's unwavering. Or if you get a new insight and you're like, hey, actually, if I felt it come through and I'm supposed to do ayahuasca every month this year, for instance, and you felt like that was intuition guiding you, what happens? Will that, like, do you feel like that cannot occur based on the state you're in and the person you are? Or do you feel like you're open to something like that happening and shifting the belief completely?
I would not be open to that happening.
Okay.
If I had a feeling that I was supposed to do ayahuasca every month,
Yeah.
then I would most likely go down the path of becoming a medicine man.
Yeah. Okay.
My belief is, as humans operating in the three-dimensional framework of society, that would take me too far out.
Yeah.
And limit my ability to stay within it and influence it. That's for me.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And
that was the extremified version, right? Like
yeah,
that's like the most.
Definitely. And so am I open to her speaking to me in various ways? Yes, I am. At the same time, I have a lot of shit tests, i.e. you, Brandon, a lot of people, now these medicine men that I have open dialogues with, that I can ask.
Yes.
And say, hey, this thing is present for me. Do you think this is right? Do you think this is the way to go? So I would get a lot of external feedback from people to help shit test me.
Yes.
Because when I got out of ceremony, I have never felt so much love in my body and cell and heart. It was just bursting out of me. Mm-hmm. I would put my hands in the grass and I could feel the heartbeat of the earth.
Yeah.
I was so connected. Mm-hmm. And I can see how that would become very addicting.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it was, oh my good, I've tapped into a whole new realm of existence. Mm-hmm. And this is where I want to live from. At the same time, when I'm on the grass on all fours, like massaging the earth, like looking at people, it's not a very integrated way of being.
Yeah.
Because nobody else was there with me. So it was a very individualistic experience that was not shared with society. And because I have a big mission, and we have a big mission to support people in this three-dimensional plane, for me, it's very, very important to stay
That
here.
makes sense. I love that. And that's your why.
Exactly.
So it makes a lot of sense. And you just clearly defined the journey that people can go on to get super clear on what does it mean for me. Some people may be like, I'll never do plant medicine. And it's very clear.
Totally.
And it's like, that's what it is. That's going to serve me the most. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm a believer of, try it out, give it a try. That's how I like to associate and navigate to see what occurs, with reverence, of course. But you just brought us on a beautiful journey to get clarity on why you're doing it, the greater mission you have here as a human on this planet, because again, we're humans on this planet. When we go and use these plants, it can feel very different than that, but to ground back into our human experience and the impact we want to have here, we can look at how we want to navigate with these medicines. What's realistic? Are we chasing the feeling and the high of the plant, or are we integrating these altered states into our life and our reality? And I think that's the big difference you're sharing, because it's so easy to chase that high and be like, oh, cool, I just finished it. I'm going to book another one because it felt good.
Totally.
Or be like, I want to integrate this. I don't think you're at the same frequency you were before when you're touching in the grass. I haven't seen you do it in like 4 hours. Yeah. So it's been a while since you were in the grass with your hands. But that way of being is still within you. And I know you can bring it back up through modalities like breath, through different experiences. It's just not at the level that I have brought for you, but it let you witness in yourself, as I can imagine, as I have as well with plant medicines, the potential that's there. And that's what's beautiful.
100%. And what just came through when you shared that, when I think about this last journey down to the jungle, one of my biggest realizations and one of my biggest teachings from ayahuasca was, you have a beautiful fucking life, go live it.
Yeah.
And that fucking gives me goosebumps when I say it, because I remember being in the jungle alone.
Yep.
Thinking about you, thinking about our community, thinking about like surfing and all these amazing humans we have around us. And I remember being like, oh my God, I'm like, life is so good. This is amazing.
Yes.
And when I came back, my integration was playing, was enjoying, was experiencing. And so I think one of the challenging things for a lot of people is you go into these ceremonies, you get these realizations, and then if we go back into a life that we're not overly stoked about, we can get into that need to leave it, that need to run from it. And it was really cool. I actually had one of our clients who signed up for our retreat messaged me and said, how are you going to help me integrate? I work a 9 to 5. How are you going to help me not want to leave my world and just stay in the jungles of Costa Rica with you guys? And I was like, well, that's going to be impossible because you're going to want to there, right? No, but really what I said was, you're a bridge, right? You got to bring the magic that we cultivate at the retreat back into your world, and you got to use that to cultivate a new environment around you. And so I think from an integration standpoint, one of the most important things is we can't use these medicines and come back to the lives that we subconsciously are resisting. We have to take these medicines, take these teachings from the jungle, return to the village, and cultivate a new experience, a beautiful experience. And I think that's kind of where this challenge comes from. Where this challenge comes from is we think that the medicine is where we're getting all the joy in ceremony, but really we're forgetting to take the lessons, take the teachings, and create ripples and build beautiful things and bring that back to the societies in which we live.
Exactly. And that shows up everywhere. That's the humans who live for a vacation.
Totally.
The humans who live for the weekend.
Totally.
All of that. If you're not integrating the integration of the elation, then we're not living a bridged and created life that we actually love to live. This is what we were talking about with pleasure. But this is it, right? We get addicted to the high. So we chase the high and we want to constantly be in that high, but we run out of supply. Like we get burnt out in that area. You can't stay there. What you can do is integrate it to your reality, and it feels so fucking good when you can do that. I love how you said bridge, because that's what it's about. It's not about all of us leaving our jobs, coming to Costa Rica, living here off the grid, doing whatever. It's about integrating into the reality you have, your why. It always goes back to your why.
Yes.
You have the truth within you. You have your North Star. Name your why. Fucking own it.
Yeah.
And let these beautiful experiences, these love-filled experiences, come back and integrate and create more light in what you're already doing and what you're here to do. And I love that, dude. That's what it's about.
That's what it's about. And it was cool when you were just sharing this. I pictured going into the jungle. These medicines give you this beautiful jar of pixie dust.
Yeah, you're like,
and it's like, cool, I've cultivated this jar of pixie dust. And then we go back to where we come from, and we're just like, yay, everyone gets pixie dust and pixie dust. And then it's like, my jar's getting kind of low. All right, it looks like I've integrated a lot of this pixie dust. Maybe that's time to go back and refill and spread and share.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool analogy because it's like that's what this stuff is used for, to create ripples. And that's what ayahuasca is used for. It's a doorway to teach, to learn, to share, so that we actually we bring change to this world.
Yeah.
We instill love, because I've never felt more love in my life than I ever have on that medicine.
And now you can create your own pixie dust.
Totally.
Now there's a new version of that. It's not that you need to go back to the jungle to find more pixie dust. It's like there was a code in there that unlocked for me where I can actually start cultivating some more pixie dust than I could before.
Okay, I like that addition to the analogy.
Because I see what you're saying. Yes, and you can go back.
And what I would say is maybe sometimes you gotta go back to get a different color pixie dust.
Oh, okay,
so maybe
yellow,
you know how to
pink.
make the gold stuff. You need to go get some blue, some pink. Because I do think there is a lot of value in spending time with these medicines.
Yes.
Repeated time with these medicines. And I love how you added that, because once I got the code of my life being super dope and being very grateful for that, and really the only thing that matters is living for my excitement and love for life.
Yeah.
That's now a new neurological pathway in me. That's something that is now wired into my nervous system. I still have trauma. I still have challenges. I still have other things that
pixie dust
I still will go back to work with, and I will work with grandmother again. And at the same time, it's really important to know, and I love how you brought that up, that these codes we do have within us. And once we learn a certain code, we can cultivate that within ourselves.
Yes. Find your pixie dust.
So, just keep getting pixie dust. The whole rainbow of pixie dust.
Out of context, it sounds hilarious. In context, it sounds hilarious. In all the ways, it sounds
the ways.
But it's true. You find that light. And yeah, that's, I mean, in the journey I did, when I did 5-MeO-DMT, I'll just quickly share this.
Which also bufo.
Bufo is, what it is. It's from frog, which is where like, okay, kind of a plant. It eats, It
eats things.
It eats plants,
bugs,
so it's
plants.
plant medicine somehow. Anyways,
Science.
We'll skip past that. I did that, and in that, one of the greatest insights I got was just beam. And yes, it was personal to my experience, but I feel that goes across the board. To remember our essence. If we can tune into that, and of course you can have blocks, you can have traumas, you can have anything holding back from that potential, but if you can get to that place to continuously be at a spot where you can beam. Pixie dust codes.
You beaming, bro.
Beaming. That's that gold pixie dust.
You beam.
And I love it.
Get it? Do you get it?
Yeah. But that's it, right? We get these different codes and these experiences, and for me, I can go back to that and remember that. Even when I say that, I'm like, I feel it. It's just words to somebody listening to this. Maybe you hear that, like, just beam, cool, that sounds whatever. It sounds woo-woo.
Sure, right. DMT 5-MeO sure gave you a code. I don't know.
I hope you're not saying that. You could be, though. Whatever. Say what you want. Say what you want. Say what you will, but I'm going to beam. And
I was going to give you one of those.
Okay. But that's it, right? We get these codes, we tune into it, and we can continuously recreate that state without having to go back to the thing. Like, I haven't felt called to go back to that medicine, but I've recalled and looked at those notes that I wrote. I'll tune into that as kind of an affirmation. Like, oh, yes, I remember that. And I have that within me. It just unlocked it. So, yeah, I truly believe that. And that's beautiful.
So I would like to summarize this for people because we went on somewhat of a structured tangent.
Sure.
Important takeaways from this, in my opinion, for me, are less is more. Know your why. Once you feel like the modality or the medicine has actually really, truly been integrated into your why, and you have people or objects or situations around you that can shit test you on this, then revisit stepping back into the jungle. Do you resonate with that summary?
Yes. And there you go. Improv. Yes, and notice if and when your addiction to healing occurs, if you have that, and ponder on this idea of intuition being trained or innately being there and challenging yourself in what you call intuition. We'll have a grander podcast on this, but I'm very intrigued by this and continuously challenge myself. And as Cam's saying, the shit test comes up and occurs. It's good to have people around you to show up for that as well. Those are the only two pieces I would add in.
Perfect.
And find your pixie dust. You don't have to go into plant medicine for these things. These are just examples that we're talking about today.
On that note, we're having a retreat in Costa Rica in December.
There won't be plant medicine.
There won't be, but we will be breathing.
We're going to be in some altered states.
We're going to be getting into some altered states
you're gonna
for
feel like you're on a journey, because you are.
December 29th to January 4th.
New Year's Eve,
Costa Rica. You're going to start 2023.
Correct. Got it.
Like you're in a rocket ship.
Yeah. So
a rocket ship full of pixie dust. You knew you were going there.
Yep. Nice. Beautiful.
Link's going to be in the description.
You're invited to get ignited.
Stay lit.